The Ursuline Sisters essentially operate a nonprofit business, and like any business, personnel recruitment is a challenge, and succession planning is essential.
Thought Leaders is brought to you by Dominion East Ohio.
When you said that the Ursulines adapt to the culture, and we're talking about 41 members of this order.
Yes.
You've adapted as well, though, by bringing lay people into positions, such as your newly appointed director of Beatitude House.
Right, we have. And that's one of the things we've noticed. Certainly that's been a trend since the 80s or 90s, but especially in this last decade or so. We don't have as many sisters who are going to be able to fill the leadership positions in our own community ministries. And so we have begun to work more closely. Now, let me say, in a sense, even the inspiration of St. Angela was always giving us a direction that way. When St. Angela founded the Ursulines, now she would never have used this word because I don't even know that the word existed, but she networked with people. You know, it's a late 20th, early 21st century word, but she was already very much doing that. She has in her writings that she would gather with some priests, with some wealthy benefactors, with some, she called them influential women. They were probably widows who had some resources. She would gather with them and the young women, and they would kind of evaluate how things were going and see what the needs of people were. Now that was in the 16th century. I think one of the strengths that we have as a community is that we have a strong network of people with whom we collaborate. Members of the church, the clergy is certainly supportive and we're partners with them. Benefactors who've been supportive of us, people that we've worked with in our ministries over the years, former students. You know, we gather with them and get some advice and say, okay, so what are the needs? What are the best ways for us to do that? We also have a group of associates, women and men who join with us, not just to be advisors or not just to be partners in ministry, but also want to share something in terms of a growth in their own spiritual lives as well. We do gather with them, and sometimes from among that group of associates, but as often as not, as a group of others, we have drawn people to be not just collaborators with us in ministry, but really to take on the responsibility of some of our most important ministry tasks. The director of the preschool now is a lay woman. Our new director of Beatitude House is a lay woman. So these have been things that have been coming, you know, kind of gradually. Now we know it's the case.
What's your succession plan?
Well, actually, I'm glad you asked that question because we're in the midst of trying to restructure some of our things. You know, for most of our history here in Youngstown, almost 145 years, we are an autonomous group. We run our own
business?
shop.
You have your own business, essentially?
We do. We have our own kind of business. This property, the Ursuline Mother House, is our property. And you know, we've always been kind of self-sustaining, and that's always been kind of the hallmark and kind of the centerpiece of how we operate things. About 30 years ago, we started to have some other ministries, in particular Beatitude House, and that was something always associated with the Ursuline Sisters. For most of its history, you know, it's had an Ursuline sister as the director. We consider that what we call a sponsored ministry. But it also has a bit of an autonomy. It's a separate corporation. They have their own 501c3 status. Then eventually we started our HIV/AIDS ministry, and that has grown. You know, we always started these ministries as really small. When Beatitude House first opened, they had 4 apartments. Sister Margaret Sheets lived in, they had a building that had 5 apartments. Sister Margaret Sheets lived in one. They had 4 other families. It was just this really small little thing, and then grew to now we have a program in 3 different counties here in Northeast Ohio. AIDS started as a faith support group. They met once a week with people who themselves were either infected or affected by HIV or AIDS, and it was faith sharing and support. And those first couple of months, they did that faith sharing and support, and they went to a lot of funerals, you know. But from there, it grew into support in terms of a meal program, and then some outreach with some stuffs, and then started a children's program, you know, to now it has a housing component to it as well. The preschool, you know, for a while it was just part of the whole mother house. We separated that out into a separate corporation, part of our Ursuline Center, so that it had an autonomy. So that's how our ministries started. We're right now in the process of establishing what we call an Ursuline Ministries Corporation, and we're in the process of establishing a board of directors for that. The sisters are certainly part of it, but we want some people to have a sense, lay people, people who are our friends and advisors and benefactors, people who will help us to say, how do we think about the future of these?
How do we continue?
Yeah, how will they continue? And we want to try to find ways that the ministries not just hang on, we want them to continue to thrive. And certainly we have some people right now in the community who are doing that, but we know it won't be too much longer until we'll have fewer people in the community who can do it, and we need to put into place some structures that'll help us preserve that for a longer time.
So that's essentially your succession plan, is your
It is. We are
structuring
in
a
the
new
process
corporation.
of creating it.
a new corporation that'll
Yeah.
have some subsidiaries,
Yes.
such as Beatitude House or
Yes,
the
right.
HIV. And how are you funded?
Well, there's a variety of answers to that. In terms of the community, you know, how do we operate our own kind of in-house
How big
things?
is your business?
The mother house itself, when I say the mother house, I mean our property, the care and maintenance of the sisters, paying our employees, all of those kinds of things. Our budget there is about 1.8 million, so that's this corporation. Now the numbers I'm going to give you are kind of round numbers, all right? Sure. Beatitude House is about 2 million. The HIV/AIDS, well, the whole center, the Ursuline Center, which is the preschool, HIV/AIDS, and other parts of the center, their whole budget is about 4 million. So the whole operation is a big operation. The mother house is supported still largely through the salaries of the sisters who are working full-time and continue to earn a salary. Most of our sisters are engaged in some type of ministry. Some of them part-time because of their age or their own health, but many still full-time. So that's a huge source of our income. We also, many years ago, set up a retirement trust and you know, spent a lot of resource trying to fund that retirement trust. That provides, you know, I don't want to say a pension, that sounds way too business-ish, but kind of a pension for each of our sisters. The sisters do get some Social Security. Now when I say they get some Social Security, it wasn't until the Nixon administration that nuns were even allowed to apply for Social Security or pay into it. So we've only been paying into it since the late 60s, early 70s. And because none of the nuns were paid on their own Social Security number, we just paid a bit of what we called a fair market value sum in. So we get a pretty modest stipend back. Only those sisters who worked in an organization that did pay them separately. Sometimes the hospitals pay separately. You know, our sisters who are chaplains in a hospital, they paid them separately. Their Social Security is a little higher. The rest of us, our Social Security tends to be in the $200 range.
So do you have any other revenue streams where you sell anything or anything other than raising money?
No, we don't. we have benefactors, you know, I would say probably about, in any given year, 10 to 20% of our income comes from donations.
Do you ever worry about where the money's coming from?
You know, that is not a major worry.
I mean, I know you turn it over and you know that God will provide.
Right.
I get that, but
Yeah.
is it ever like, I wish he'd hurry up and provide?
Actually, over the years, and I say this at least since the late 50s, over that long time, 60, 70 years now, we have had really good financial leadership in the community. Every superior in those years has taken steps to strengthen the place. We're not rich, you know. Now, we do own this beautiful piece of property in Canfield, Ohio, and it has value in and of itself, so that's good.
How did you get this property? Did somebody give it to you?
Where the preschool stood originally, at the corner of Shields and Raccoon, that was a donation. This property was purchased. Now, you know, the story is that in the early 1960s, they didn't want to sell property to nuns in Canfield. However, there were some benefactors, you know, following the lead of St. Angela. There were some benefactors who made the purchase for us, and then we bought it off of them. So that's how we originally got the house. The superior at the time was Mother Edna Marie. People might remember that name. She was superior at the time and organized the whole kind of building of the mother house. But part of her plan was that it would be paid off by the middle of the 1970s. By the time the Ursulines had their 100th anniversary in Youngstown, this mother house would be paid off. Now that was a pretty lofty goal, and she achieved it. The 100th anniversary in 1974, they were able to burn the mortgage. So that we don't have any significant debt has been a real help in terms of helping us secure our financial stability.
Thought Leaders is brought to you by Dominion East Ohio. For information on programs, services, and community engagement, visit our website.